Now, I'll admit it's a little bit out of character for me to talk about differentials. Low-owned players that, if they do well, will propel you up the leaderboard. I'm going to go through some of my favourites in this video. I wanted to start things by going through a graphic from a fantastic Twitter account I found, or X account, FPL Tom Hadley. I will leave a link in the description to his Twitter, and it's an absolutely fantastic resource, particularly with regards to players that score well for DEFCONs. I know I've gone heavy on DEFCONs on my channel, but for the purposes of differentials, I don't think the rest of the player base has caught on to them yet. And I just wanted to show you what we've got here is a graph, basically, or graphic showing the percentage of times where specific players scored more than 4 points in the game. So what you've got here is a list of some midfielders who, well, they were just really good last season, right? Salah, Bruno Fernandes, who else have we got in there? And Cole Palmer, for example. All of these players did really well, of course, for points. But mixed in here as well are some that have done really well for defensive contributions as well. So Casemiro, he got 1 attacking return last season, but in 56% of his games, he scored 4 or more points. Other players of note, Elliot Anderson, Tyler Adams, Norgard, although he's obviously gone to Arsenal now, Declan Rice, McAllister. You know, some of these players you wouldn't traditionally pick in the game, I don't think, for attacking returns, but they still scored more than 4 points on quite a lot of occasions. And I've spoken about him a lot, but I really do think Elliot Anderson is going to be a good option this season. 5.5 million, only 3.4% owned. He scored 36 points from defensive contributions last season. I always say this, it's the equivalent of 12 assists. Add that onto his total, it's 20 attacking returns. 20 attacking returns, basically, 5.5 million, is pretty much what Morgan Rogers got last year, right? So in Elliot Anderson, you're looking at a player that is almost the equivalent of what Morgan Rogers is in terms of stats last season. 5.5 million. At 3.4% ownership, is going to be a really good differential. Now, before we go any further, I just wanted to say that all of the stats and the data next to the players is brought to you by Fantasy Football Hub. They've got plenty more tools that will help you with your FPL game as well, in terms of expected points data for all of the players and an AI team rating as well. Check out Fantasy Football Hub and you can sign up with 50% off using the link in the description below. And if you don't win your mini league this season, Fantasy Football Hub will give you your money back. One differential that I think I haven't seen spoken about at all yet, Rodri. 6.5 million, 1.6% ownership in the game. I'm not entirely sure of his fitness status yet and whether he's going to be 100% to go for the start of the season. But I do think he's going to, at some point, become a really good option. Because, well, looking at his 23-24 season stats, 18 attacking returns, 8 goals and 10 assists that season. And FPL Tom Hadley, again, has put together this fantastic graphic which shows how many points per game Rodri scored, including defensive contributions. He is a prolific player in FPL, basically, when you include defensive contributions. So first couple of seasons, 21, 22, 22, 23, he was stronger for defensive contributions, averaging over 13 per game, basically. And in 23, 24, they dropped off a bit to 11.1. But he obviously got the attacking returns, the 18 attacking returns, and averaged 5.8 points per game with defensive contributions included and that level of attacking returns. Now, I'm not thinking or not suggesting that Rodri is going to get, 18 attacking returns again like he did in 23-24. I think with the inclusion of Reinders in the team and other players they've signed and just other players they have, I don't expect him to have quite as good a season as that. But I think he's going to do really well for defensive contributions and still get some attacking returns. Just think Rodri could be a really good, consistent option for points. Steady Eddie in terms of attacking returns, and consistently knock up those defensive contributions, I reckon. Yeah, I think Rodri could be a really nice option this season. Another player, this is not a defensive contributions player now. This is purely a sort of attacking returns player. We've got Antoine Semenyo. Sorry, move my microphone there. 18 attacking returns last season, 5.2% ownership. And I think, who's another Bournemouth player who we'll get onto, I think people are being put off of Bournemouth purely with that Liverpool away fixture in Game Week 1. If you can get your head around the fact they don't have an ideal fixture in Game Week 1, I think beyond that, the Bournemouth fixtures are good. I don't necessarily back them defensively. I think Zabarnyi and obviously Howson going is a big loss for them. But I think from an attacking perspective, much has really changed from a Bournemouth perspective. Once they get that Liverpool game out of the way, they got Wolves, Tottenham, Brighton, and even Newcastle, who are definitely not the best defensively in my mind. think that's a really good set of fixtures. And Antoine Semenyo at 7 million, I still think is pretty decent value. And the same applies to Evan Nilsson as well. I stuck through a player there. 7 million. He underperformed his XG last season. He's a really good prolific striker from accumulating XG per 90. He's one of the stronger players in the league for that. I just think it's going to be a good season for him. I'd also question Cliver in and out of the team towards the back end of the season. Could Evan Nilsson become that sort of talismanic penalty taking figure? I think probably. Him and Semenyo I think are really decent options at 7 million, and their ownership is certainly nice and low. And then we've got Ismail Assar as well, who I sort of flirted before. 6.5 million, so he's slightly cheaper than Semenyo. 15 attacking returns last season. Played every game for Crystal Palace. Underperformed his XG. And usually when you look at expected assists for players massively overperform their expected assists. Whereas Ismail Assar was sort of bang on. So I think he's got potential to get more than that this season. The only thing that would kind of let me down a little bit is the fixtures. However, I think once they get the Chelsea away fixture out of the way, Forest, you don't really know what you're going to get with Forest. They've not had a good pre-season. Villa are not necessarily absolutely resolute defensively, and then they've got Sunderland and West Ham after that. West Ham, I don't know what I'm saying, you know what I mean. I think there could be some goals for Ismail Assar in Crystal Palace, and the same applies for Mateta too. 7.5 million. He's had a really prolific pre-season. I think if Eze leaves, he could become an even better option because I think he takes penalties back. He had 14 goals and 2 assists last season. I think he's just a solid striking option, isn't he? And like I said, with the fixtures for Sarr, on the face of it, they could look difficult. I think realistically, the only real tough fixture they've got there is Chelsea. Again, Forest not had the best pre-season. Didn't look all that amazing towards the back end of last year as well. Villa concede goals, and then they got Sunderland and West Ham. I don't think it's too bad. I think Mateta could be a solid option at 7.5 million, particularly if Solanke doesn't look like he's fit to start the season. This one is really, really rogue, but I think, if Wissa leaves Brentford, they don't look like they're really in the market to sign a new forward or striker. I think Thiago is going to get some minutes for them. 0.9% ownership, 6 million. Didn't really do anything last season, admittedly, but the fixtures are not bad. Similar to what we discussed, they've got very similar fixtures, actually, just in a different order to what Crystal Palace have. I think if this guy's starting up front for Brentford, going to get good minutes, probably score goals, and he's 6 million and less than 1% owned. I can't say, too much more about him because we don't know too much based on the stats he put up last season. But I think starting Brentford striker, 6 million, less than 1% owned, that he counts as a differential you could pick. And finally, I'm not going to go overboard on this because I spoke about it in my last video in terms of cheap players or good cheap players in the game. But what we've got here is a set of stats from FF Bobby, which is defensive contributions per 90 for defenders, basically. There are, I would say, some low-owned defenders here that you can take advantage of that I don't think the FPL casuals are going to get, really. I don't think they're going to be targeting the good defensive contributions defenders. And I'm picking out probably 2 or 3 here that I think will score well for Defcons this season and be low-owned. Particularly Chris Richards and Joachim Andersen. I think those two are going to be really good. I think it also points towards potentially picking some of the West Ham defenders. Not the fullbacks, but potentially the centre-backs. You've got Kilman and Mavropanos there as well. I just think these defensive contributions open up the door to picking some defenders that are less owned in the game. And hopefully this graphic gives you an idea of who you could choose from. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. When I talk through differentials, I don't necessarily like to talk through ones that are just massive, minutes risks. I think a lot of these players are going to play good minutes for their teams. They're going to do well this season. They just aren't particularly high owned. So I don't think these are high risk players. The risk you're taking, I guess, is that in their place, you're not picking the high owned players. That's it, really. You're just taking a risk in terms of ownership. I don't think anyone can deny that Evan Nilsson, Semenyo, Sarr, even Rodri, players like that, they're going to score points this season. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments, of course, if you agree or disagree with any of these players I've mentioned. And if you've got any others you want to add to the list, let people know in the comments as well. And yeah, that just leaves me to say, subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just here on your screen if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be sure to catch you in my next video.